budget. Really, what they...
Thank you for joining us on the live broadcast of Senate plenary today, Wednesday, the 21st of April, 2021. The Senate has already reconvened, and the order paper for today looks quite busy. We expect 5 readings to be considered for first reading, and then the Senate will also be considering 5 bills for second reading, while 2 significant reports will be considered. One of them is the budget of the Nigerian Customs Service, and then the Senate is also expected to consider the report of its Committee on Local and Foreign Debts on the request of Mr. President for the approval of external loans to finance priority projects of the government and projects to support state governments. Now, let's give you time to follow the proceedings on the order paper. I am Ignatius Nkwo.
First of all, thank the committee to which I belong for the job at least.
But are you not the vice chairman of that committee? No. No, that's your report. That's your report, so you don't have to, you can't commend the committee, you are the committee. Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, I represent Niger North Senatorial District. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me align myself with the past speakers, minus the Vice Chairman. Mr. President, mine is to bring an observation on page, is it 114? Where the provision for Capital Project 2021 budget proposal summary. Here, the second item. I don't know, how do you do the numbering? I'm trying to see. Is that page 12? We are the last page. I think it's the last page of the summary. The last page of the summary before the grand total. Mr. President, my concern here is, if you look at the second item, which talks about armory stores, ammunition, etc., the provision is 45 million. And if you look below it, stationary stores, you are having 97.339 million. And coming down again, item number 16, photocopiers, trading machine. If you look at the provision, about 87 million. Mr. President, the point I want to make here is, we read many occasions or instances where men of the Nigerian customs are being gunned down by smugglers because the smugglers are using more superior firepower. And so I'm a little bit concerned with the provisions I've seen here, which to my mind appears inadequate against some other items that to me appear unessential. Because the fact that custom officers, men and officers are allowed to bear arms is simply because the danger in the work they do. We are those who intend to sabotage our economic, are also using superior firepower to kill our custom, men and other ranks. So I don't know if the chairman have actually looked at this, or maybe perhaps there are other explanations beyond what I understand. But otherwise, I'm a little bit disturbed that it means one essential ingredient for their operation is being under-budgeted. These are my concerns.
Please, Chairman, respond.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. The first one is the non-federation account. Why is it reduced to 178 billion? The reason for this is this, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. When the custom target was pegged to 1.46 trillion, when we increased it to 1.6 trillion, they were arguing that they cannot meet the target. We now told them that they can meet the target in view of this variation that has come up after 2021 finance bill, the opening of borders, the cabineted drink and all the rest. So we now increase it to 1.6 trillion. When they increase it to 1.6 trillion, that was based on the framework given to them in 2020 before the COVID. And that 2020 before the COVID, the federation account was 1.5 trillion. The non-federation account was 1.78 trillion, making 1.6 trillion. We just captured it from what was given to them in that 2020, which was revised to 1.4 trillion in that order. So they were arguing that it will be easier for them to do the collection if we maintain that level so that they can make the 100% revenue collection. That was why we gave them the 1.78 trillion in non-federation account. And if we have increased it to non-federation, increasing more than that, the target will be more than that level of 1.6. That was why we agreed to give them that level and 1.5 trillion in federation account, making 1.6 trillion. That was that. Then the one of the aircraft, we even asked the Controller General, why are you maintaining the aircraft of 200 million when the aircraft is not flying? He told us that it is only when it is not flying that they maintain more aircraft than when it is flying, that they have to do the same services as if it was flying. I'm not an aircraft flyer to maintain. So we argued that when he said yes, it's the same maintenance, even when it is parked on the ground. So that was why we allowed it. So the one of the 91 trillion capital budget, which my colleagues said about, we argued on that 91 trillion billion. The problem with the custom, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, is that, you know, they are revenue generating agency, they collect monthly. What they do is that they will collect till the end of December before they will start to award the contract of 2020. Like, for instance, the contract of 2020, it was last week that the FEC approved it. That is this 91 billion, of which they approved for them. They will wait till the end of the year before they will now say they process their contract for this, because I will not ask them, why do you have to wait till the end of the year? He said they will have to wait so that to collect the 20 every month till the end before they decide to award the contract. For instance, the budget of the capital budget of 2021 now, they will not, if they are following that pattern, they will not award it this year. They will award it next year. And that is why we now put that retained earning. And if you now look at the capital by say you machine it, you discover that they still have surplus. Then what of this surplus? What do you do? You say they retain them. They retain the budget, the surplus in their account. They don't want to. They will take it anywhere. It's there, and that they will use the budget to augment. That is the system they are adopting, which we agree, which we did agree with them. We struggle, and that is how they have been operating.
Well, Chairman, I think you need to upscale your oversight on the customs, because this narration that they will keep money, they will not do budget implementation, is as a result of insufficient oversight. So we need to be knowing these kind of things in good time, that you report back to the Senate, this is what is happening. And you also advise them of what is appropriate and what is legal as far as the implementation of the budget is concerned. We are not supposed to be hearing this now. So please, just increase your oversight on the customs. Distinguished colleagues, we'll go to the recommendations. Sorry? Yes. Use your mic.
The ammunition, because it is what they sent to us. We don't have to increase the ammunition, because if we increase it, it appears that we are trying more than the beliefs. We have increased their revenue. They're supposed to increase the ammunition because they know people and what. This is true. Because this is what they sent to us that they wanted. and we increased the budget for them. We now told them that we discussed this one with them. We said they should now submit the supplementary budget based on the increased revenue we are giving to them, which they said they will send a supplementary budget to increase those arms and ammunition supplies.
Senator Samuel.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Sam Ebu. I represent Ebonyi North Senatorial District. Mr. Chairman, I want to follow others to appreciate the chairman and the committee. But I have one single question on item number 49. 2 billion naira as welfare packages and in bracket retirement incentives. Mr. President, when somebody is retiring, he has retirement benefits. Retirement benefits is paid to somebody who is retiring. I have never seen where somebody is retiring and is being paid incentive of up totally 2 billion to be paid to people who are already retiring as incentive. So I want him to explain that, because I know it is those who are working who pay incentive to motivate them, not somebody who is retiring. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, have you finished? Okay, thank you very much. Chairman, before we go to the recommendations, I'm sure you have had so much observations with respect to the report, and of course, the way the budget of the Nigerian Customs is implemented. I think the idea is to alert you as a committee to take note and put more efforts at ensuring that whether it is the target revenue or the implementation of the budget or any issue that the National Assembly should be interested in, that we step up our activities with respect to that segment of government. So I want you to respond to what the issue raised by Senator Samegu, and then we'll go to the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Like the issue raised by my distinguished colleague, welfare package for retirement incentive for all ranks. It's all ranks. It is not for one person. It's all the one that both officers and men of custom. Then when they retire, the retirement, because for instance, when you talk of welfare package, that if you're talking about the retirement, in custom, they have 13 months salary, while other service has 12 months salary. So they have their welfare package for all their staffs, both officers and men that retired in a year. That was the cumulative total of 2 billion they put there. It's not for one person, it's for all the ranks. The only thing you can say that they should have even detailed the number of those people that will retire. But you know, this is a budget. It's all estimate. It's all estimate. Yes, now look at the welfare package retirement for incentive for all ranks. People that retired, they give them incentive. Those who did very well, these are the ones they perform well. They are retired. They give them this package. You should know that custom is not like other this thing. They are paramilitary something. They give them incentive for retirement for all ranks. And you know this one is a budget. It's not something that is there, and it all depends on their collection. Eh? You say what? No, this is not the gratuity. This is retirement incentive. Is retirement incentive. That is incentive. It's not this thing.
Distinguished colleagues, let's go to the recommendations.
1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1
On page 4 of the report, the committee hereby recommends as follows. And there are two recommendations largely. Recommendation 5A, that the target revenue collection of 1,361,758,061,014 naira only be approved. Those in favor of this recommendation say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Recommendation 5B, that income and expenditure including retained earning for ongoing projects of 257 billion 183 million 671,694 naira 71 kobo only be approved for 2021 financial year. Those in favor of this recommendation say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Once again, please, our committee on customs, make sure that the budget is properly implemented, and the budget, by the way, has a lifespan of 12 months and is meant to be implemented not within the year, the entire spread, not at the end of the year. So ensure that this is what goes on henceforth. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the third order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on Local and Foreign Debts on the request for approval of external loans to finance priority projects of the government and projects to support state government. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Clifford Odia to move the motion for the Senate to receive and consider the report of the committee.
Senator Clifford Odia, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My very distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator Clifford Odia, represent Edo Central Senatorial District. I rise to move the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Local and Foreign Debt on the request for approval of external loans to finance priority projects of the government and projects to support state government. I so move, Mr. President.
I need a seconder. Senator I.D. Gyang.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I remain Senator I.D. Gyang from Plateau North. I rise to second the motion that the report of the Committee on Local and Foreign Debts on the request for approval of external loans to finance priority projects of the government and projects to support the state governments be received and considered.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Local and Foreign Debts on the request for approval of external loans to finance priority projects of government and projects to support state government, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Chairman, please lay the report. Chairman may present the report now.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, my very esteemed colleagues. This report, Mr. President, is in respect of the request for the approval of external loans to finance priority projects of the government and projects to support state governments. The Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria read the communication dated 19th May 2020 from the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, requesting for approval of the Senate for external borrowing for various purposes. See attached table below. This borrowing are three in number. Number one, to finance urgent proposed revised 2020 budget deficit. This request is 5,513,000,000, detailed as follows. One, this International Monetary Fund will lend us $3.4 billion, the World Bank $1.5 billion, African Development Bank $500 million, and Islamic Development Bank $130 million, amounting to $5,500,000,000. Two, to finance priority projects of the federal government to address impact of COVID-19 pandemic and to improve Nigerian food security. This loan will be given by Export-Import Bank of Brazil and at the amount of €995 million. This fund will be used to finance the green imperative to enhance mechanization of agriculture and agro-processing in Nigeria. Number three, to finance state governments of facing physical challenges arising from COVID-19 pandemic. This loan will be given by the World Bank to one, for state fiscal transparency, accountability and sustainability program to provide physical support to states between $500 million to $750 million. Two, the B, the COVID-19 Action Recovery and Economic Stimulus Program to support state-level efforts to protect livelihood, ensure food security, and stimulate economic activity. This is also between $500 million to $750 million, amounting to $1.5 billion for those two items. Two, the communication together with the annexes attached thereto will refer to the Committee on Local and Foreign Debt for further legislative action. Three, the committee invited the Federal Ministry and agencies of government for an interactive session and answer session where the Secret Senate members were briefed. The Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, and Debt Management Office were in attendance. Four, the committee knows that revenue projection across all tiers of government continue to be adversely impacted by the revenue shortfall due to global COVID-19 pandemic and the resultant increase in government spending to mitigate the impact of the pandemic and also to prepare for post-pandemic era. Five, the committee knows that the request of Mr. President included a request for approval of the Senate on the external borrowing of the sum of $5.5 billion $513 million to ensure the urgent financing of the revised 2020 budget deficit, which was approved by the Senate in June 2020. 6. The committee recalls that in agreement with the attending MDAs at the consideration of the above request in May 2020, it was decided that in the prevailing circumstances of absence of required details in respect of some of the programs, considerations will resume upon availability and submission of necessary documentation to the committee. 7. The committee notes that further documentations have now been made available by the relevant ministries in respect of the following borrowing requests. These requests, as earlier detailed, are also detailed in 1, 2, and 3. Findings and observations. The Green Imperative Project. Like you already mentioned, the lender is Export-Import Bank of Brazil, and it's Green Imperative Project to enhance the mechanization of agriculture and agro-processing in Nigeria to improve food security. And the sum is €905 million. Our findings proper. 8. The committee found out that a total of 6 indigenous assembly plants, 1 in each geopolitical zone, have been identified and will be rehabilitated and retooled to assemble completely knocked down mechanization, farm machinery, and equipment to be imported from Brazil. B. The committee observed that the CKD mechanization, farm machinery, and equipment is to be so imported from Brazil will be specifically adapted for local conditions with job creation opportunity for citizens. D. The committee observed that the loan is intended to be used to deliver technological package to the smallholder farmers for a fee through the establishment of service centers in each of the 774 local governments of the Federation. D. The committee further observed that the service centers will be owned and run by private business entities who will be supported to acquire various mechanization tools through favorable borrowing rates from the participating commercial banks. State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability, and Sustainability Program to provide fiscal support to states, which is popularly known as TIFTAS. This loan also will be given by the World Bank at $750 million. Specifically, this loan is to be used for State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability, and Sustainability Program to provide fiscal support to states. The committee observed that there is an ongoing program called State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability, and Sustainability called TIFTAS Program, facilitating the sum of $750 million funded by the World Bank, currently running in all states of the Federation and FCT. The committee knows that the self-financing was approved by the National Assembly in June 2020 as part of the $1.5 billion development policy financing to finance federal government 2020 budget revised deficit. G. The committee found that in October 2020, following the continuous economic disruptions occasioned by the pandemic and in view of the need to consolidate on and sustain the gains of the program and to increase state fiscal capacity to respond to the COVID-19 crisis, the above program was restructured and expanded. H. The committee found that the objective of restructuring is to support states to introduce measures to further mitigate fiscal shocks by introducing COVID-19 response deployment link indicators, DLI, at state level to match the fiscal measures at the federal level and reallocating the undisbursed balance of program funds towards the new DLI. The committee knows that it is based on the above restructuring that the additional financing in the sum of $750 million is now required for the COVID-19 response of Nigeria and same has now been tagged Nigeria SIFTA's additional financing for COVID-19 response program for results P4R. Then the COVID-19 Action Recovery and Economic Stimulus Program, popularly known as CARES. This loan will be given by World Bank and is $750 million. It is specifically for COVID-19 Action Recovery and Economic Stimulus Program to support state-level efforts to protect livelihoods, ensure food security, and stimulus economic activities. Our findings on this is: 1, the committee knows that the project development objective, PDO, or the program CARES, is to expand access to livelihood support and food security services and grants for poor and vulnerable households and firms. Okay. The committee knows, therefore, that the loan starts COVID-19 Action Recovery and Economic Stimulus, that's CARES, is to support budgeted state government intervention of the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory in their efforts to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the livelihood of poor and vulnerable households and micro enterprises. All right. The committee knows that these interventions are intended to target existing and newly vulnerable and poor household farmers, micro and small enterprises, MSCs, affected by the economic crisis caused by the pandemic. And the committee knows that the financing will be used to support scaling up existing safety net interventions at the state level by expanding the coverage of social transfers and labor-intensive public works opportunities in the social sectors, livelihood grants, social service infrastructure, micro projects. And the committee further notes that the financing will be used to support scaling up of interventions that will help farmers increase food production and facilitate smooth functioning of the food supply chain. The committee further notes that the financing will also be used to support scaling up interventions that help MSCs through grants, support post-COVID loans, grants to support operational costs. P. The committee knows that each state is entitled to access $20 million grant under the program, provided that it achieves a minimum of 4 disbursements linked indicators. The FCT is entitled to $15 million. Conclusions. The committee observed that financing for GIP, that's the Green Imperative Project, additional financing for SIFTAs and CARES are being sourced from multilateral and bilateral global lenders and partners with proven track record of previous financial accommodation and support to Nigeria. B. The committee knows that borrowing are largely concessional loans with low interest rates and a reasonable moratorium and payback period. C. The committee most importantly knows that the indicative terms and conditions under which the loans will be borrowed, there are no unusual or onerous conditions attached, and the terms do not in any way compromise the sustainability of Nigerian economy or impugn the integrity and independence of Nigeria as a sovereign nation. The committee knows finally that the loan is in the immediate best interest of the Nigerian state and its citizens in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic in a way that the economy will be positioned for quick recovery and resume growth. The committee knows that while Nigeria's total debt stock is on the increase, it is relatively low vis-a-vis the country's GDP, and the increased borrowing requirement is needed to sustain the economic recovery. Resolutions. The committee therefore resolved as follows: that the Senate do approve the external borrowing of the sum of $1.5 billion and 995 million euros from the following multilateral and bilateral institutions. Of course, they have all been detailed earlier, and I think I may have to go one by one. One, the World Bank, basically for the purpose of this loan is to state physical transparency, accountability, and sustainability programs to provide physical support to states, popularly known as STIFTAs. It is $750 million, and the interest rate is 2.4% per annum. Of course, broke it down into 0.7% service charge, 5% commitment charge, 1.25% interest rate. It's for a grace period there's a grace period of 5 years, and the tenure is 25 years. The second one is World Bank. This is also for the COVID-19 Action Recovery and Economic Stimulus Program to support state-level efforts to protect livelihoods, ensure food security, and stimulate economic activity, commonly known as CARES. This bond is for $750 million, and this is 2.5% per annum, broken down as 7.5 service charge, 0.5 commitment charge, and 1.25 interest rate. And it is for 5 years grace period and 25 years tenure. The last one is the Export-Import Bank of Brazil and Dutch Bank of Germany. This program is called the Green Imperative Project to enhance mechanization of agriculture and agro-processing in Nigeria, popularly known as GIP. And it's broken down into from two lenders. First one, which is Export-Import Bank of Brazil, is 671 million euros, and the Dutch Bank of Germany is 324 million euros, totaling 905 million euros. Of course, other details attached to the loan are also specified there. Second one is that the terms and conditions of the loan on each lender as contained in a duly executed loan agreement be forwarded to the National Assembly for proper documentation. Closing remarks. The committee wishes to sincerely express its appreciation to the leadership of the Senate for the opportunity to serve in this capacity. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleagues.
Any comments? Senator Brian Abdullah.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues. I want to use this opportunity to thank the sponsor or the presenter of this very important report. The only thing that I want to find out, Your Excellency, is with this loan approved, how much are we owing globally? How much is Nigeria owing, so that we can know exactly how much we are indebted? Can we know that? Thank you.
Chairman, take note. Senator Adiola Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleague. Mr. President, let me start by commending the chairman of the committee for this beautiful and very, very detailed report which he has since provided, which he has just provided to us. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, there is no doubt that the current situation of the economy globally demand drastic action. Nigeria is not an exception. The challenges economic-wise today demand that every country of the world must look for a way out of the current economic situation. And embarking on this borrowing plan, as explained by the chairman of the committee, it shows that we are being proactive. I understand my colleagues who have raised questions about what is the current debt of the nation in terms of what are we owing. Yes, it's a good question. But the bulk of what is contained in this report is for the states, the 36 states of the Federation. Out of this, only now around 95 million euro is for the present government. $1.5 billion of it is to the state government. And don't forget, in his remark, he said we have approved the 1.5 billion. 750 has commenced. They are only asking or seeking for additional $750 million And it's a concessional loan with a very good rate and good moratorium and the lifespan. A rate of between 2.5 and 2.45, a moratorium of 5 years, and a period of 25 years each. Tenor. I don't think it's too bad for our state. But my word of advice to the state is the judicious application of this loan. Either we like it or not. They seek for our approval to please give our nod for them to assess this loan. But the committee must devise a means to ensure that we are not here only to just approve and give this loan to the state. Because at the end of the day, what this loan is to be meant for is clearly stated in this document with us. One is to enhance the livelihood of every citizen of that state. Two is another one to sustain the state so that they can continue to go on as an indivisible entity. But by the time this loan arrives, there might be diversion, misappropriation. And this is one area that I believe the Senate should look into to ensure that as we are approving this loan for the state, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we should also make sure that we are on top of the game to ensure judicious application of this loan. And I want to say this, the now 95 million euro that we are seeking to assess is to develop agriculture. And as you can see from the comments as contained in this document, a center will be established in the 774 local government, and it will be privately run. It's not going to be business as usual. It's to be run by private individuals. And as such, if it is that is a loan that is due to be paid back by those individuals who assess it. So the only thing I can say, and if you can see, the tenure attached to this 995 million is between 15 years and 7 years, with a very little moratorium. So it's not going to be business as usual. It's a loan that will be repaid back. So I want to allay the fears of my colleague that this report, as presented by the chairman, is nothing to fear about, because what we have approved now, bulk of it is to the state, which is the $1.5 billion, and those 995 million euro to the federal government to be privately run and to be paid back by those who assess it. I so submit, Mr. President.
DSP.
Thank you, Mr. President. Uviomo Agege, Delta Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, I join everyone who has spoken in commending the job done by the committee, most especially the comments made by Senator Yayi. I only have one observation, Mr. President. I'm just worried, and I need some clarifications on this. In the report, it is stated that the terms and the conditions of the loans from each of the lenders, as are contained in the duly executed loan agreements, is to be forwarded to us for documentation. Mr. President, I'm a little bit concerned here. It shouldn't just be for documentation. We need to know, we need to be convinced that the committee, in arriving at this judgment, have had the opportunity to look at all of the loan documents, to look at all of the terms and conditions. If they give us that assurance, I think we'll be comforted. But I'm not so sure that they've done that, or if they have, they've not so stated. And the reason I bring this up, Mr. President, I remember a couple of times ago, I'm sure during our interaction and engagements with the economic team, an issue during the pandemic, an issue arose, Mr. President, as to whether or not all these loans were taken, good as they are, whether the National Assembly, our committees representing us, had the opportunity to look at the content of the loan documents to be sure that we're okay. And in the process, we found out, Mr. President, that that wasn't the case. I actually remember, if my memory serves me right, the people from the budget office actually threw the ball back at us, that it was up to us to request to see these documents to be able to assure ourselves that the terms and conditions have been looked into. And it turned out, Mr. President, that our committees didn't do that. So I want to find out now, Mr. President, if the committee, in making these recommendations to us, had the opportunity to see the terms and conditions of these loans. Thank you, Mr. President. But having said that, I'm in support. Let me be on the record. I'm in support of the report, but I need that clarification. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chairman, please take note of what the DSP said. Senator Betty Apiafi.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, I'd like to follow up with the presentation by the Deputy Speaker. It is so important for us to see the terms of agreement of this loan. The loan has a 5-year moratorium and is supposed to be funding private sector initiatives. So you need to know, because within the 5 years moratorium, we are still going to be servicing the interest on the loan before the repayment starts for 5 years, for 25 years. Who is going to bear the cost of the interest in the 5 years when this project is being implemented and monies are being given to the private sector to set up whatever they are setting up in the local governments? Are the state governments going to be paying that, or is the federal government going to be paying that? We need to find out what is in the agreement. Again, we are importing a whole lot of completely knocked down component parts of agri equipment, CKDs. The question you ask, are the CKDs, do they have components for maintenance of those equipments when they are installed? And so, I mean, like, people could answer some of these questions. It will help us a lot to know the viability of the entire project we are trying to invest in. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Chairman, please respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The first question has to do with how much are we owing. Mr. President, I think this question is germane at this point. But unfortunately, Mr. President, it will be difficult to give the actual amount that we are owing right now. Because in the 22.97 billion that we approved last year, it will try to know that government is there to assess that money. In fact, the maximum they have assessed as at last week was less than 1 billion naira, $1 billion. Because it is only when the National Assembly approves that the final details of the loan will not be properly signed. It's just like somebody going to the bank to ask for a loan, where the bank will agree that yes, we can avail you this facility, and they write a letter of commitment that yes, we are going to award you, give you this loan. But satisfying the loan, satisfying the conditions of the loan, is a new thing altogether. So this is why as at now, Mr. President, it's difficult to actually say exactly how much we are owing. Well, as far as, like I said, my explanation also has to answer the two, loan documentation. Documentation actually starts taking place when the National Assembly has approved. Because if the National Assembly is not able to approve, there is no need continuing with final negotiation and documentation. So you cannot document, and at the end of the day, National Assembly now turn it down. Then it's no work done. So I think that also answered the question number 2. Well, as far as I am concerned, in the arrangement for the Green Inspective Program, I think the CKDs, there's an action plan for the maintenance of this equipment.
Well, before we consider the recommendations, let me also make my comments here. The comment by the DSP is to, I think my understanding is to say that you would be given the terms and conditions of the loan when the request is to be processed by your committee. And my understanding is this is one step that is necessary, because it's not enough just to look at the annual, what do you call it, the payment, the rate at which the loan is granted. There could be some other issues behind. I want to imagine that you did that, because that should be the basis for some of your recommendations. It's not enough to base the recommendations on the interest rate alone, or the moratorium, or the tenor. They are fundamental, of course, but there could be some other issues. So I want to imagine that that was something your committee did. Secondly, when Senator Ibrahim Gobir asked you the total debt, I knew you are not going to give the answer, because it's going to be difficult for you to say this is it. And this kind of thing, you don't just quote a figure anyhow. And I'm happy the way you responded, but I think you will take an additional step. That step is, you may be requesting the DMO to be updating you, whether quarterly or whatever, so that you know exactly as a committee where we are in terms of what we have approved and accessed. Because it's very important. It's not enough for us to just approve, but we should also know when we are able to access such loans. So I think you need to get a periodic report from the DMO. Lastly, I think it has been our practice that whenever states are involved in requests for loans, we just call maybe the governor or the commissioner of finance to come and explain how they are going to use the money. I think something is missing. Next time, I would suggest we call the state assembly of the loan. We cannot go to the state and start saying, where is the fund used? We may, but I think we should emphasize to the State House of Assembly that this is what we are approving, and we are approving these things for these purposes, and we are expected to play your role of oversight to ensure that these funds are used for these purposes. I think we need to take that additional measure to maybe beef up our ability to monitor and track how these funds are utilized. With this, I suggest that we look into the recommendations, and thank you very much for the report, but we should take cognizance of all these issues raised by our colleagues, because they are all fundamental. Thank you. So recommendation are what we call the resolutions on page 6. The committee therefore resolve as follows. 1, that the Senate do approve the external borrowing of the sum of $1,500,000,000 and 995 million euros from the following multilateral and bilateral institutions, and I will read them. World Bank, purpose, state fiscal transparency, accountability and sustainability program to provide fiscal support to state sifters. Amount $750 million, interest rate 2.45% per annum. Grace period 5 years, tenure 25 years. World Bank, number 2, World Bank COVID-19 Action Recovery and Economic Stimulus Program to support state-level efforts to protect livelihoods, ensure food security, and stimulate economic activity and cares. $750 million, 2.5% interest rate per annum, 5 years grace period, 25 years of tenure. 3, Export-Import Bank of Brazil, BNDES, and Deutsche Bank of Germany, green imperative to enhance mechanization of agriculture and agro-processing in Nigeria, JIP, €671 million and 324 million euro, LIBOR and BNDES margin and Eurobor plus 3 years of plus 3.10, 3 years of grace and 15 years of tenure. Also, 995 million euro, 2.9% 9.35% per annum, 2.87% per annum, 2 years of grace, 7 years of tenure. Total, $1.5 billion and 995 million euros. Those in favor of this recommendation say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. 2, that the terms and conditions of the loans from each lender as are contained in a duly executed loan agreements be forwarded to the National Assembly for proper documentation.
I will amend it to state, Mr. President, terms and conditions of the loans from each lender as contained in the duly executed loan agreement. Approval and documentation.
Also, is just, but we need to scrutinize. So maybe seconded by the Deputy Chief Whip.
I so second, Mr. President.
Recommendation 2, those in favor of recommendation 2 as amended by the DSP, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fourth order of the day is the second reading of the Nationwide Toll Bill 2021. Distinguished Chamber on Wednesday, 2nd December 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the distinguished Senator Ibikule Amosu to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Distinguished Senator Abikule Amosu.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues. Lead debate on a bill for an act to establish a nationwide toll-free emergency number for reporting of emergencies throughout the Federation and for related matters 2021. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it gives me great pleasure to lead the debate on a bill for an act to establish a nationwide toll-free emergency number for reporting of emergencies throughout the Federation and for related matters 2021, SB 583. This bill was read for the first time in this chamber on Wednesday, 2nd December 2020. The bill seeks to provide for a nationwide toll-free emergency number that will aid the implementation of a national system of reporting emergencies and for other related matters. Emergency telephone numbers is typically a 3-digit number that can be easily remembered and dialed quickly. Emergency numbers are needed in life-threatening situations. They can also be used to report emergencies of various types, such as road accidents, fire, burglary, medical emergencies, and so on. Emergency telephone lines are set up in a way that once a call is made, it must be answered by either a dedicated telephone operator, computer-aided call handling system, or an emergency service dispatcher trained to control the calls in order to provide help in an appropriate manner. The dispatcher may find it necessary to give urgent advice in life-threatening situations. Some have special training in telling people how to perform first aid or CPR, which may be life-saving. The direct dial emergency number system was first deployed in the United Kingdom in July 1937 using the code 999. In the United States, the first emergency call using dedicated code 911 was made in Haleyville, Alabama in 1968. India's national emergency response number on the lines of 911 became operational in 2014. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, in many parts of the world, an emergency service can identify the telephone number that the call has been placed from. With the latest enhanced system such as the 911 code, emergency telephone numbers are able to provide physical locations of mobile telephones, and these are often specifically mandated in a country's enabling legislation. However, Nigeria has several helpline numbers for emergency situations. In Lagos State, for example, there are several toll-free emergency numbers for police, ambulance, fire service, LASMA, CAI, LASEMA, women abuse, domestic violence helpline, child abuse helpline, and flying doctors, air ambulance, and medical bills, among others. The FCT, Ogun State, and some other states of the Federation have different emergency numbers. The presence of multiple emergency telephone numbers in Nigeria have been identified as impediments to getting accelerated emergency response during emergency situations. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the bill essentially seeks to establish efficient and effective emergency response system. It proposes the use of 112 as the national emergency number or any other three-digit numbers as may be agreed upon during the public hearing, if the bill goes through the Senate. A nationwide system for reporting emergencies will dispense with the multiplicity of emergency numbers and provide a single point contact for assistance in case of any kind of emergency. Calls or text messages sent to the emergency number will land at the nearest public safety answering points or the control room for necessary secondary responses. Emergency numbers will create easy access to Nigerians, especially those in remote areas. Nigerians and other residents in the country can use the toll-free numbers to seek help in times of distress and emergency. Recent statistics show that close to 90% of Nigeria own mobile phones. Therefore, a toll-free emergency number will go a long way in ensuring that Nigerians in distress are just a dial away from the relevant emergency institutions. The number will provide a one-stop shop for receiving distress calls from the public and dispatching same to appropriate response agencies, the first responders who will respond to the needs of the callers. The proposed 112 toll-free national emergency line is easier to learn, remember, and dial. It will save a lot of Nigerians the stress of having to memorize more than one emergency number. Conclusion. This bill clearly intervenes to facilitate emergency response system in the country by coordinating the response numbers for effective administration and management. For this to be effectively carried out, there is need for a synergy between the Nigerian Communication Commission, other relevant agencies of the government, and the mobile network service provider. Mr. President, before I end this, I realize that, yes, we have the 112, but I don't think it is presently the way that is intended by the establishment of this bill. It will give the necessary legal foundation to the toll-free emergency number that will be working throughout the length and breadth of this country. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I hereby urge you to support the second reading of this very important bill. Thank you for your attention.
Senator Bala Ibn Ali.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues. This bill can be described as one of the greatest innovations of our time in view of the challenges we are facing as a country. All efforts geared towards ensuring that people have access to help under emergency situations must be initiated and commended and sustained by the Senate. So if you look at clearly what the bill seeks to do is to say that instead of having multiplicities of numbers that can be used as helpline, we can have one national helpline which every person can have access to and can have access to help from the authorities concerned in case of emergencies. And I think that a step taken at this stage will help to simplify access to help by citizens of this country. Now, why do we say the helpline should be 3 digits? You will remember that in the past, what we hear is police will give us numbers that are about 11 or 12. Under emergency, it is very, very difficult to remember these long numbers. So, to shorten that, that is why in other climes, 3-digit numbers are provided for the purpose of having access to emergency, access to those who will offer help under emergency. So I will greatly urge my colleagues to allow this bill to go through second reading, and when it is referred to the committee, to expeditiously report back so that a step can now be seen to have been taken by this Senate towards ameliorating the sufferings of our citizens. I therefore commend the sponsor of the bill, and I urge my colleagues to support the bill. The only thing I have seen that worries me, Mr. President, is that in other climes, these three-digit numbers are co-located with landlines, virtually, because their system still exists. As to whether that can be configured to make it available to be used by mobile telephones is what I don't know. But even where that becomes a hitch, we should urge the authorities concerned to take steps to ensure that something is being done to ease communication between those in distress and those who have the responsibility to offer help under emergency situation. Once again, I thank you for the opportunity, and I urge my colleagues to support the second reading of this bill.
Senator Tolu Odebi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Tolu Odebi. Distinguished colleagues, I rise this afternoon in support of this bill. I believe this bill is a bill that will definitely go a long way in helping to stem a lot of the insecurity challenges that some people find themselves. Mr. President, you know, there's a saying that says a stitch in time saves lives. And if we had had this kind of bill in place, it would have helped maybe a lot of people, some people that were kidnapped or they are facing challenges due to some of the insecurities. It is very pertinent to say, Mr. President, that this bill will go a long way, and it also helped in unifying all the various phone numbers that we have in different states. If you go to a different state, they have a different number, and having a unified central number is something that will go a long way in helping people and give the people the confidence to know that if they have run into problems or issues, at least they can always call somebody and hopefully get some kind of response. I think for me, what is important is the coordination of the responding agency or the coordinating agency that will be manning these phone numbers and their interrelationships with all the other states to ensure that there's an adequate and quick response when the number is being called. It's a very, very good bill. I think it's a bill that definitely should easily pass, and I urge all my colleagues to please support it. And once again, I commend the sponsor of this bill, Senator Bukula Musa. Thank you.
Is anyone against the bill? Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish a nationwide toll-free emergency number for reporting of emergencies throughout the Federation and for related matters 2021 SB.
A toll-free emergency number for reporting been taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Communications to report back within 4 weeks. Senator Ibrahim Gobir, you said something.
You said? Are you sure? You have already the rules. Yeah, it's on that.
Maybe it's something that the committee will take note of.
Yeah. Okay, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, I also want to use this opportunity to thank him for what he did really. But there is something that we did during the Security Committee. In fact, LCC told us that there is this toll-free number, 212. So I think it's good if it goes to the committee
They look at this one and then check it.
Yeah, I think the Committee on Communications will take note of that. And we also help them. Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fifth order of the day is the second reading of Psychiatric Hospital Act, number 92, 1979, Amendment Bill 2021. The distinguished senator will recall that the bill was read the first time in this distinguished chamber on Thursday, 5th March 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Ibrahim Yahya Oloregbe to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Distinguished Senator Ibrahim Yahya Oloregbe, Kwara Central.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Ibrahim Yahya Oloregbe. I represent Kwara Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, this is a bill for an act which seeks to amend the Psychiatric Hospital Management Board Act, Cap 34, Laws of the State of Nigeria 2024, to establish federal psychiatry at Abuja, Kwara State, to provide for specialist services psychiatry and facilitate the training of specialist personnel at all levels and for related matters. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, before I proceed, permit me to provide you with a brief background to the bill. The Psychiatric Hospital Management Board Act was enacted under the military administration in 1979 with only 3 hospitals in Yaba, Lagos, Aro, Abeokuta, and in Guselu, Benin City, when the population of Nigeria was expected to be 71.36 million. The number of psychiatric hospitals subsequently rose over the years to 8 across the country, with only 5 geopolitical zones of the country being covered. We have 2 psychiatric hospitals in Southwest, Yaba and Aro, Abeokuta, 2 in South-South, Benin and Calabar, 1 in the Southeast, Northwest and Northeast, that is Enugu, Sokoto and Maiduguri respectively. As of now, there is no any federal psychiatric hospital in the whole North Central geopolitical zone. Psychiatric hospitals are hospitals specializing in treatment of mental disorders, which include anxiety, depressive, schizophrenia, bipolar, and so on and so forth. Psychiatric hospitals vary widely in their size and grading. Some hospitals may specialize only in short-time or outpatient therapy for low-risk patients, while others may specialize in temporary or permanent care of residents who, as a result of a psychological disorder, require routine assistance, treatment, or specialized and controlled environment. Several reports have revealed, Mr. President, that Nigeria is generally short of physicians, and there are less than 100 psychiatrists for its over 200 million people. The bulk of the psychiatric services currently are provided by the 8 regional psychiatric hospitals as listed above, and the Department of Psychiatry in the 12 medical schools across the country. Despite these facilities, experts generally believe that mental health care remains inadequate in the African most populous black country. Disturbed that the number of people with psychiatric challenges is growing dramatically as a result of rise in drug abuse and other psychological, economical, and social factors. The need for psychiatric hospital at this time cannot be overemphasized. The objective of this bill is to amend the Psychiatric Hospital Management Board Act, Cap 34, Laws of the State of Nigeria 2004, and establish a federal neuropsychiatric hospital at Abuja, Kwara State. To enable the achievement of this objective, the Kwara State government had offered to release the Comprehensive Health Center at Abuja to accommodate this hospital. In addition, the government has also offered to provide other necessary support for the takeoff of the hospital. A letter to this effect, signed by the Governor of the State, has been transferred to the Minister of Health. Furthermore, there are available consultants at the University of Research Hospital that may be utilized to commence services if this hospital is approved. In conclusion, Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the establishment of this hospital at Abuja will expand access to quality psychiatric services for Nigerians in the North Central Zone, as well as the bordering state of Oyo and Osun states. The bill has only 3 clauses, amending the 2nd and 3rd schedule to the principal act. In line with our rules under 77 sub 3, a compendium of financial implication is hereby attached. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I humbly urge you all to support the second reading of this bill. Thank you all for your kind attention. I so move, Mr. President.
Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I'm Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, Niger North Senatorial District. Mr. President, let me commend the sponsor of this bill, my brother, distinguished Senator Ibrahim Yahya Olorogbe, who is just freshly 60. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the issue this bill seeks to tackle, which is mental health, is one area of our health care delivery services that is actually represented in service delivery. And of course, human beings do not live in vacuum. And because there is a huge gap in service provision for people who are suffering from one form of mental illness or the other, it is very common for you to see that traditionalists have taken over the space, and in the course of it, of course, they subject a number of our Nigerian citizens to torture and other forms of very dehumanizing, treatment. And so, expanding the space to have an additional, psychiatric hospital to be cited to take care of at least the North Central is a welcome development. As it is known, based on the number we have right now, many of the people who are suffering from this, they travel long distance before they can access this kind of service. And of course, like we know, a simple mental health illness like depression, where somebody is facing some physical shock or even emotional shock, can lead to somebody becoming a drug addict, just simply because he did not get the required medical attention. And so for me, I want to urge that we support the second reading of this bill, because doing so is definitely expanding the services for mental health care in Nigeria. With these few comments, Mr. President, I urge that my colleagues support the second reading of this bill. I so submit.
Senator Oloremi Tinubu.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. I'm Oluremi Tinubu, representing Lagos Central Senatorial District. I want to first commend the mover of this bill, and also to add my voice to this very, very important amendment. The times we are going through in Nigeria is really very challenging times. We talk about banditry, kidnapping, and a lot of other things. If we have the opportunity to interview all these people critically, we'll see that. And when we look at the case of psychiatry in our polity, people will see that people usually it's not some ailment people want to identify with. But even in this room, there are a lot of people going through things that are psychological without them even aware. Until it goes through, I see that SP is looking at me. I'm serious.
Do you know of anyone? Okay, go ahead.
When you see people burst out in sudden anger, that, people will believe that, what did I say? It could have stemmed from something that, the person slept with and woke up with. But what we see in most cases that, they actually need psychiatric need, is when you actually see them, that they have really gone into a mental state, that it has really debilitated into that, the family cannot handle. But at times, when you look at cases like schizophrenia and bipolar diseases, all they needed is just little medication. And when they get the right treatment early, such people can become very productive. And apart from this amendment, I think that Nigeria has come to the crossroad where we have to look at mental health issue in a very wholesome manner. We have to look at it. When we look at our youth now, most of them are abusing even cough syrup. So, and all this, they will tell you, is through joblessness. And all these things lead to different things and different reaction in society. And I think what our colleague has done, and as usual, I want to really commend Senator Lori, I don't know where he is, for bringing this about, and I believe that all our colleagues should give it their ample support. Thank you, Mr.
Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, I just want to throw a kite. As the title of the bill is, it looks misleading. It seems as if you are amending an existing bill, while actually what you are doing is to create another institution by amendment of the bill so that another institution can be created. So I thought, wouldn't it be better, to say a bill for an act to establish the Psychiatric Hospital Management Board, to amend the Psychiatric Management Board to establish a federal neurosurgical hospital in the North Central Zone of Nigeria and for related matters. That's what I think it should be. Because if you just say, you are just amending the act, while the real body is talking about establishment of an institution, I think there should be an amendment, to the...
Well, Leader, my understanding is if it's only when you amend the present act that you can establish, and it's like constitution amendment. Somebody could sponsor a bill trying to amend a certain section of the Constitution, but you still just say it's a Constitution amendment. So I don't know, but I think previously we amended some of this kind of agencies to allow for introduction or establishment of new institutions.
Well, this is where we'll round off today's live broadcast of Senate plenary, today, Wednesday, the 21st of April, 2021. At the moment, Senate has approved presidential request of external loan of 1.5 billion United States dollars and 995 million euros. And then the Senate has also passed the 2021 budget of the Nigerian Customs Service of 257 billion naira, where it also approved 1.6 trillion as its targeted revenue for the same year, 2021 fiscal year. At this point in time, we will now hand you over to our studios for the continuation of our scheduled program for the day. I am Ignatius Unko, and on behalf of our outside broadcast crew, enjoy the rest of our programs.